things just fell at my feet. My 9-card sleeves that I pulled out just fell down as we started this show.
The magic of a live show.
I was like, what was that? Oh, 9-card sleeves on the floor. I'll pick them up later. Like I was saying, Kickstarter is just the most expensive way to buy. I bought, I don't know, 6 months ago now, a set of playing cards with Great Gatsby art on them. You know, I guess they were sold by the artist or whoever he did. He made a set of playing cards with the Great Gatsby theme. I think the set was like $15, $20. I don't remember what. But like I said, nowadays, you don't get charged. That $15, $20 didn't include shipping. And 6 months later, I get a $7.50 charge for shipping. I'm like, whoa. Now my $15, $20 set of cards is $25. Like,
yes.
That's a lot for a set of playing cards. I always find that a little disconcerting.
How many cards?
A set of 52 playing cards.
52 playing cards. And it's
I
being
don't even know
sent
if
by,
it's 52. Yeah. What was that?
and it's being sent by regular mail.
I think so. Once again, it's probably a service sending them out, so that makes it more expensive.
Which it does, because a weight of a set of cards like that, it probably shouldn't cost more than $4.75 to ship in a nice little box.
Yeah.
Including the box itself, any paper to protect it, or bubble wrap, and tape. It's all included. That should be all included in that price. But because it's a third-party platform probably putting it together, you're paying for that manpower.
Right. This is just annoying. Hello, all. Hello, Tit Goblin.
Welcome.
But you just never know, because it's like you don't get. And I understand too many people lost too much money on shipping on Kickstarter. I mean, I 100% understand that.
Yes, they take into account just about everything except for the price of shipping going up by the time you're either done with the campaign, or more so by the time they finish doing the fulfillments, because these items need to, they got to be created, they got to go to press, they got to be shipped, they got to be put together. So by the time it goes from you buying the item and that item being shipped out, the price of shipping may have gone up 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
And I've heard many horror stories where people will have a very successful campaign, and then boom, the shipping is what gets them.
Yep. And I've heard too that they just underestimate shipping sometimes. They underestimate the manpower for shipping. They underestimate the package. They just I've heard that. So I understand that they don't do it to the end and use a service, but sometimes it's just like, where'd this $7.50 bill come from? What do people want for Christmas? There's a good quote. Well, I actually have an Amazon wish list going all year long that my family uses to get me stuff for Christmas.
I also have an Amazon wish list that I always update, and a very close group of friends, we always do a holiday get together. So we do a Secret Santa type of thing that we've been doing for a number of years now. And, that's when it usually gets more updated, is when we get that email, by the way, please update. It's like, oh, let me go on and sometimes go and say, well, I never got these items. Do they even still exist? And so I try to update those as well. But it's hard sometimes, because when I see something I want, I usually just get it.
Yeah.
That kind of a thing.
Well, often that's where I'll put like collected editions.
Right.
On my, where I'm like, you know what? I don't have to get this collected edition or whatever right now. I can put it on my wish list and just leave it there for a while. Especially since a lot of times on Amazon, the collected editions go down in price over time.
Right.
But I can tell you what I was looking at tonight that I just discovered existed, because I'm always looking for things to make my commute easier.
Okay.
Usually it's nothing that'll make my commute easier. It's
Yeah.
just everyday things. A matter of fact, I have a horror commute story to tell you. Where is that one? Oh,
Yeah, the only thing that could possibly make a commute easier is
yeah,
either a teleportation
there's
or
nothing. Just
private vehicle that gets you there.
that's really just stuff to carry along with me.
Right.
I had a couple of months back gotten this little carry bag that I was trying to figure out what to use with. And it turns out I can put a little sketchbook in it, and it's got a place for some pens, maybe a little bit of stuff. So I was thinking about how I could use this, and I put a D ring on it. And I found out, and I usually carry a D ring on my keys. They now have D rings like this, or carabiners like this, crossed with like utility knives, crossed with like a Leatherman. So there's a little knife that comes out of it. There's a little screwdriver that comes out of it. There's like 7 tools. I'm like, oh, maybe I could get one of those to put on instead of just a light, normal aluminum D ring. So I was looking at those tonight to possibly put on my Christmas list.
Mm-hmm.
They're anywhere from $10 to $20. I was like, oh, look at that.
See, that makes perfectly good sense because as I get older and I watch all the things that are made, the things that are made for men, we're all just trying on whatever level to become Batman. And so we're gathering a utility belt of items.
That's what it is, a utility belt of items.
That's exactly what it is.
It doesn't really make your commute easier. It just gives you more stuff to carry.
Or to
keep. At one time, you might need it.
Yep. There have been plenty of times where I didn't have a sketchbook on me. I was like, I have an idea for something to draw, and I should draw it out.
But I'll tell you my nightmare commute of Wednesday night, which was my last class of the semester. So my classes are over for break now. But and I read some comics on the train. I'll have to tell you about those too. Some digital comics. But normally I take the train in from the Nanuet, New York train station. It's Jersey Transit. Take that train down to Secaucus Junction, and then switch trains to go from Secaucus to Penn Station. No, that's my normal commute. Well, here I am waiting for the 12:25 p.m. train. It's just after lunch. Good evening, Comic Rack.
Hello.
Just after lunch, waiting for my 12:25 train. And it's never late because there's only one stop. But the Spring Valley stop is before the Nanuet stop, and that's the only one. Spring Valley is the end of the line. So it's like I'm just waiting for doesn't show. It's 12:25. So of course they have an app. So I check the NJ Transit app, and it's like it just left Spring Valley. It's 3 minutes away. All right, I'm good. Check it again after it doesn't come in 3 minutes, and left Spring Valley 3 more minutes away. Okay, what's going on here? Wait another 5 minutes, check the app. 3 minutes away. It left Spring Valley. And I'm just like, all right, there's something going on here. And I'm digging further into the app looking for news. And the name of the train line it's the Pascack Valley line. So I see there's a little exclamation point on the Pascack Valley line. Boom. I pop on it, and it says, there's been a trespasser strike outside of Spring Valley. And I went, trespasser strike? First, I'm thinking it's like a work stoppage. Then I realized that means the train hit someone. You know what happens when a train hits someone? That train don't move. Mm-hmm. I've actually, a few years ago, I was on the train, and a train way ahead of me up on the track hit someone, and it kicked us all off and sent the train on without us. So it was like, and then we were there for hours. So I was like, if this train hits someone, it ain't moving.
Right.
So I said, okay, what do I do now? And I said, I'm going to have to take a drive to Tarrytown. Now, like I said, I'm waiting for New Jersey Transit, even though I'm in New York. Tarrytown is across the Hudson River. It would be real easy to get to if there wasn't a river in the way.
Right.
So I'm like, all right, I get back in, go to the parking lot, get back into my car, punch Tarrytown train station into my GPS on my phone. Says it's only 19 minutes away. I've been in through Tarrytown train station before, but not in a while. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'm. Oh, by the way, it's pouring rain. To add to all this, it's pouring rain.
Of course it is.
Of course it is. So I get in my car, drive across the TZ Bridge in an absolute downpour, and boy, do I like GPS, because I don't. Even though I've been there, I was there a lot in the 90s in Tarrytown. You have to like go through Tarrytown in order to get to the train station. So I don't know how easily I would have found it without GPS, even having been there before. Because like I said, you got to drive through the town. It's not just like you pull off the highway and it's there. No, you got to go through town. Okay, I got there. I get into the parking lot, not a spot to be found. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cars, which turns out that's what Westchester is famous for, having, because it's a pay parking lot, but most of the time you have to be a local and register in order to get a spot. So I'm driving, I'm like, what the hell? Then I remembered back to the 90s. There was this one area of town that had meters that you had to put a lot of quarters in to park there all day, but that's what they were there for.
Right.
So I drive around town, and once again, it's pouring rain. I drive around town, find these meters, plenty of spots by these meters. I'm like, you must be able to pay by phone these days, because these days at parking meters, you can pay by phone. Sure enough, I seen it, paybyphone.com. So I pull up to one of the spots. I'm in there. Now I'm on my phone going to like paybyphone.com or something like that. It was probably a comedy routine if somebody was watching me. Because like I said, it's pouring rain.
Yeah.
Your phone doesn't work out in the pouring rain. So I'm in my car. I have to keep running out, find a number on the meter, run back into my car, enter the number. I had to register myself. I had to register my car. I had to register my credit card, and I had to register the meter. So I'm just like, it's like enter your license plate number. I don't have that memory. I had to run out, look the license plate of my own car because I didn't remember the second half of it. Run back in, put that in. First time I ran, they're like, enter the meter number. I run out, I come back in, I enter the meter number, and it's like, no, we don't recognize that. I'm like, oh crap. So, because it turns out there's an individual meter number, which is really big. And then there's like an area number that's really small. So I had to run out in the pouring rain. I'm searching for another number. After about 10 minutes, I was parked. Meanwhile, $15 to park, by the way.
Mm.
I run. I don't even know when the train's coming. I'm just like, I'm catching whatever trains. Luckily, I know they run more often than they do at my normal station. So then I got to use the machine again to get a ticket. It turns out there's two machines. There's like, here's our regular machine. Here's our machine for daily tickets. And I'm like, my usual train, you get either ticket out of the same machine. I don't know what this is, but I go to the daily ticket. Waving the credit card at it, it's not working. I'm putting the credit card in the slot, it's not working. Wave it again, it's not working. Finally, the second time I got it in the slot, I got my ticket. $30 round trip ticket, by the way.
Wow.
More expensive than the $20 round trip ticket at my normal train station. I was like, holy cow. So I go over, I'm waiting for the train. Now I'm like, you know what? I want to check on the train I was almost on. So I go back onto the app to check the one across the way. And it's like canceled. I'm like, I'm glad I'm not there.
Yeah.
So then I got on the train and I downloaded the MTA app because the west side. I mean, the East Side Railroad. There's MTA. That's the
Yes.
Metro North is MTA.
Right.
So
That
luckily,
app I have. Mhm.
yeah, I go on, get it, and you can see. I'm like, because now I got to get on the subway to go from Grand Central down to 14th Street. Luckily, just this, because I'm never on the subway anymore. Because I usually walk from. But luckily, earlier in the semester, I set up my phone, because nowadays also you just wave your phone at the subway turnstiles and go through.
Yes.
So luckily I had that all set up already. I was like, thank goodness. So I'm looking at, because now it also tells you all the times the subway is supposed to be running. I'm like, oh, look at that. So then I finally got into luckily once I was out of the rain at the Carytown station, I never had to be in the rain again, pretty much, because I went down into the once you're Grand Central, you walk right to the subway, and then I took the shuttle to the 2 and the 3, and I took the 2 down to 14th Street. But I was just telling Paulo before, I forgot how crowded a subway is.
Yeah.
I haven't been on so I'm like, and especially I don't know how much you've taken the shuttle between Times Square and Grand Central.
A few
That's
times.
that's sort of a really weird space.
Yes.
You get down there because every direction is just like this huge underground space, sort of low ceilings, where in every direction are trains, and people are just going in every direction, and it's not like and everything's like intersecting like that. It's not like hallways that are 90-degree angles from each other. It's just like big open spaces with hallways shooting in every direction. And you got to follow the signs, or you will get completely lost.
Oh,
Because
completely. It is such a maze down there that but that comes from the fact that each line was owned by a different company 100 years ago. You have the IRT, you have all these different names.
There's like 5 or 6 different lines.
Right. All owned by different companies. And then as the years went by, they started buying each other out. Then eventually the city bought it all. And the only way to connect these things are through whatever systems that they have. We knock down this wall, that wall, and they connect. So sometimes going from one train to another, you go through a maze like a mile long.
And like, what lunatic designed this?
And that's what it is that it wasn't made for that. It was more like, all right, the city now bought them all. They own them all. That there's not a true map of the subway's tunnels at all, because some things just end, or they cancel lines, and you have ghost stations where they close that line and stuff like that. And it is amazing how outside of the subway system itself, there's a whole other world down there that there was a book that I read while
that the Morlocks live in.
The mole people. The mole people of New York that talked about according to the book, the writer decided she's going to meet and interview some of these mole people, and they're not the Morlocks like we're hoping they are. They're not
superpowers.
As far as I'm aware of, there's no superpowers. But apparently the legend goes that the mayor of the New York mole people was upset that she wrote this book, and she's like has a price on her head. I don't know if that's true or that was just written for the book to be published. But it was fascinating to go how all these tunnels are so interconnected, and some of them you don't even know what's truly down there.
Yeah.
And the fact that they've lost subway tunnels. Like the very first, the pneumatic tunnel, nobody knows where that's at.
Yeah.
So the pneumatic tunnel.
Oh, I think they discovered it a few years ago.
Last I heard, it was still being looked for. But
it may have been another one they rediscovered.
Yes.
Eric P says, don't the chuds live down there? They sure do. Yes. Cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers. Yes, I still don't know what chuds stand for.
Amazing. But again, it's like, so the pneumatic subway system was very short. It only ran a few blocks. And that story in itself is amazing because the guy who he wanted to make a whole subway system, but he refused to pay Boss Tweed the bribe money.
Right.
But he convinced Tweed that he got in a contract from the post office to make pneumatic tubes. So Tweed was like, okay, since you got that contract, fine, build that little tunnel. Turns out the post office didn't want that. They weren't interested in the pneumatic tubes. So the guy, I forget his name, decided, all right, let's build the subway tunnel instead. Build the subway tunnel, charge people like $1 a ride. And 100 years ago, that was a good amount of money.
Yeah.
And they were just riding back and forth in a giant pneumatic tube. And once Tweed found out, he's like, I don't care if you're making this money, we're shutting you down. So they shut them down, supposed to have covered the tube, and no one knows what happened to it from there.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was it. And it was like, that's amazing to find out that it very well could have been opened up and tunneled through and no one even realized what it was. But every now and then they do discover something, like the train that's supposed to take the president to, was it Roosevelt Hotel? One of the hotels where President Roosevelt, when he went to New York, his train went right to the hotel. So he would never get out of the car. So you wouldn't see him in the wheelchair. So that subway car is supposed to still exist in Grand Central somewhere.
And Eric P's mention of chuds reminds me that chuds was a meme before the word meme was invented. Because I can remember back in like 1985, I was in college, my first year or two of college. I think it was because the movie was on HBO around that time, probably a little earlier. And if you needed to make sort of a cheesy monster reference, you'd use chuds. Which is why a few years later, in the first season of The Simpsons, he mentions chuds, and he's like, "Oh, and then the chuds attacked, huh?" Because that was, and I remember I originally thought it was just my friends and I who were making chud references, but then as I heard it more and more out there in the world, I was like, "Ooh, it's kind of a meme." It was a meme that, like I said, you and your buddies were having some conversation and you just wanted to reference some cheesy monster. Like, watch out, the chuds are going to attack.
Yeah.
Or don't the chuds live down there?
Mm-hmm.
Chuds was always the monster you'd mention. And somehow it became, like I said, before the word meme was invented, it was a meme.
Yeah.
Tit Goblin and some of the turtle storylines, they use those tunnels and cars as their home.
Yeah, man, they're controls they use their home. Lex Luthor used the subway system as his home. In the original Superman movie.
Mr. Luthor. In the comic I ended up, I was reading on my ride from Tarrytown, because I've said before, one of my favorite, and it's I actually reread one of my favorite, just a really good superhero story is Mark Miller and Frank Quitely's I forgot the name of it.
Jupiter Rising?
Jupiter's Legacy. There we go. Oh, the name flew right around it. Jupiter's Legacy. There's 2 volumes of it, 5 issues each, and it's just a really fun superheroes take over the world story. They also put out 2 volumes of Jupiter Circle, which is not Frank Quitely. Don't forget Basket Case. Ah, okay. I don't think I got Basket Case, but anyway. Oh, is that Final Order cut off now? I think that was the one you were telling me about. Right, I'll have to look. But anyway, I decided I got them digitally to read Jupiter's Legacy, which are prequels to Jupiter. No, Jupiter's Circle are the prequels to Jupiter's Legacy, which is funny now because now they have, and then there was like there's two series after it too that were once again not Frank Quitely, so they're not as good. Like the Frank Quitely stuff that's real good. These superheroes are all older. They're all in like their 50s or 60s or even older than that. That Netflix made into such a boring TV show. And then the other one, like the prequels, are when they were young, so it just gives and they're more like Silver Age stories. But so I was reading those sort of Silver Age stories of them, and they were pretty well done. Eric P. Chuds versus Frankenhooker seems like it'd be a great V film.
I recently worked on a Frankenhooker project.
Yeah?
Yeah, a buddy of mine, he's a penciler and inker, and he occasionally will contact me to color something for him. Usually when he's in a rush and he doesn't have time to color it himself, he would call me up and says, "Hey, would you mind coloring this thing?" And I colored a Frankenhooker movie poster that he was making because I think a local theater was replaying that movie for an anniversary or something, some event. And so I colored a pin-up poster type thing he made, and then he designed it in such a way that we could pull out Frankenhooker, and he was able to make stickers out of it. And then they had like a sticker giveaway at this particular event. I gotta contact him and see if he has any more stickers left, so I can get a copy of the sticker.
62 Lefty says, "Oh, Basket Case was a schlock movie that came around at the same time as Chuds, where the guy carried a basket with his brother in it." Ah, okay, I remember that name now. I never was. What movie was Mike Lackey in?
He was in Street. Oh, it was called Street. Was it Street Junkie? Street Poet?
No.
I hold on. Let me see if I can find it.
Mike Lackey was an editor we worked with at Marvel, and he was actually an actor in a horror movie, Street Trash.
Street Trash. There it is. I was looking for the cover because I colored a cover for him.
Yes, I'm thinking
about a year or two ago.
I've never actually seen Street Trash, but like I know people would approach Mike Lackey all the time, going, "Oh, because he was someone in Street Trash." Hell yeah, man! That's a nuts flick. Yeah, and he was, and to this day, he's still famous for being in Street Trash. Yeah, I think he may have been in the remake too. But I never knew him as, we never knew him as an actor. He was an editor.
Right. I didn't know he was in it until he asked me to color a cover for him that he was bringing around at two conventions for it. And I did that not too long ago. 2016 is when I did a colored a cover for him.
For Street Trash?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's still got some fame from doing Street Trash. I find that amazing. Comic Crack says, "I think it's on YouTube."
It very well could be.
Yeah. But he was an editor in the 90s at Marvel. So that's where we know him from.
Yep, and it was through him I got to letter manga.
That's right. I forgot. That's right. Yeah. He was your connection there.
Yeah, he moved over to Central Park Media, and I ran into him. And it's funny because back in the 90s, the way that you got freelance jobs is that if you happen to be hanging out at the local bar,
yep.
That's, "Hey, what are you working on now?" "I'm doing this, and that." "Oh, you're lettering." hey, do you know how to do manga lettering? It's like,
Sure.
sure.
First of all, first rule of freelance is never say no.
Exactly. So that's what I did. I was like, sure. Then I went back to Marvel and went to Dave Sharp and Tim, uh, to Dave Sharp and Tim Smith the third. I was like, hey, can you show me how to letter?
Comic Crack says, "What manga did you letter?"
Oh, well, for Central Park Media, they had, there was a set called Alien 9. It was about these young girls who had an alien attached to their head like hats, and it would give them various superpowers. And
Okay.
so their outfit was basically this helmet, this what looks like a helmet, but really was an alien creature. And they had roller skates. And it was just these three girls who had these superpowers. Government agency was like kind of controlling everything, trying to keep people quiet about aliens. But they also had this program where they go to different schools and pick these young girls to go, you want to be a superhero? That type of thing. So there was a lot of that. There was a lot of adult comics too that you won't find any credits in it, but it paid well. And the difference between mangas and comic books, the comic books are 22 pages. Mangas were over 300 pages, and you had gotten about the same amount of time to get them done, which is about that, that 3 to 4 week period. So
So you had to do a
yeah,
lot of lettering.
so there was a lot of lettering, but it taught me to be really fast. And
Mm.
back then, we had gotten like we would get the original books. We would have to cut them ourselves, cut the pages out, scan it in at 1200 DPI,
So you're doing production and lettering.
completely production and lettering, and it paid really well because I was able to pay off my computer, buy my brother's computer, get the scanner, get the whole studio pretty much set up off of like a couple of books. But
You were probably the only ones they were paying on those books. So
yeah,
yeah.
but as the years went by and the technology got easier to get it from Japan, where they were eventually just giving us books where all we had to do was clean out the Japanese lettering and replace it. All of a sudden, the page rate started changing to the point where it was like they were giving us just about everything, and all we had to do was letter it. So it was like, yes, it didn't pay as much anymore, but the work did change from there. So, but it was good money at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a lot of fun, and it was again different than the regular comic book stuff, because depending on the book title, we would sometimes flip the art. But it got to the point that people were so used to manga being a certain way
Yeah.
that eventually all we had to do was just do the translation and not flip it. So there would be a page on the front that what we would normally go to the front and stop. Do not read it from this side. Start it from the other side, and
Yeah.
then they didn't have to do as much editing to it.
Mm-hmm.
So what other books did I do? There's one called La Blue Girl. Again, that's an M18, a mature reader book. There was a lot of those, and then most of the stuff, they were some stuff that was connected and that was at least more user friendly, which is like Alien 9 was the most popular one because that became like a big hit at that time.
You know what was funny?
Mhm.
I was just watching the TV show. It's on Apple TV. It stars Rashida Jones, who is from Parks and Recreation, and Angie Tribeca, and she's Quincy Jones's daughter. Actress has been around forever, and it's called Sunny. And it's a story that takes place in Japan. She's an American who went over to Japan, married a guy, had a son. Whatever. Her son and father, and it's got this cute little robot in it too for some reason. The story is really kind of human interest drama, but it's supposed to have a sci-fi twist that it really doesn't have. But anyway, there's her Japanese mother-in-law. For some reason, is feeling self-destructive and wants to get in trouble. So she decides to shoplift. So she goes into this, like, looks like a 7-Eleven type store, general store. And she's standing by what appears to be manga, but the adult manga. And she's looking at, because there's like girly covers on them, kind of. And I'm kind of like, I think those are supposed to be adult manga. And of course, the cashier isn't looking at her, and she's just like, and she ends up just taking one and walking out of the store. And then she's looking back in the store, and she's like disappointed she didn't get arrested. So she decides to go back into the store and shoplift some more. So she takes the manga and drops it into the trash can in front of the store. And as she goes in, and you immediately see this like 10-year-old kid run up and grab it out of the trash can and run away. I was just like, it just cracked me up to see that. I was like, oh, okay, that was the adult manga.
Mhm.
That kid running up to the trash. Like if you weren't looking for it, you might not even noticed it. But I was like, But I was paying close attention to that scene because of the comics.
Right.
So, a little Easter egg in Sunny of Japanese comics.
Mhm.
Did you make it to the comic shop today, Wilson?
I did not. When I was finishing up some work, trying to get stuff done. So it's like I just have the weekend to myself. There's still 2 pages I got to finish coloring, but it was like I can go, and that's going to be a 3-hour trip.
Yep.
And it's 3 hours trip for one comic that's going to be sitting there waiting for me.
Yeah.
And it's like, I know that the next book that got bought today is another one book. So it's like, I'll go next week. So this way here, there'll be at least 2 or 3 books waiting for me. And then, of course, whatever I pick off the shelf.
Yeah.
I decided I'll stay. But I did realize that on last week's show, I think I only showed one comic book.
Okay.
I didn't show all the books that I bought.
All right. We'll see some more this week.
All right. So I still got books. I don't remember which was the book that I showed.
Neither do we.
But I'll grab the first one that's on here. And
anyone else have your LCS getting caught in the diamond snafu?
I heard about something that because they closed down a warehouse, they weren't really prepared to have moved the books to whatever was the new warehouse, and it disrupted a ton of books being delivered.
I think Boom is just leaving them too.
Oh yeah,
I just got a text from my LCS on the Boom Studio announced. I think they're going with Lunar now, Boom, rather than Diamond.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know how Diamond's going to be in business besides sending stuff to Europe.
Yeah, I don't know. But it was strange that not too long ago, they were really happy about having the ability to publish their own comics because they weren't able to do that before. And then I didn't see anything happen.
Gary was supposed to be working on that with them.
Yes, he was.
Gary Guzzo.
Yeah, so I'm guessing once Gary passed. Yeah, once Gary passed, I guess they didn't have anyone because I was kind of waiting to work on those.
Yeah, he asked me too if I wanted to do some production. I was like, sure, yeah, just because
Yeah.
Who knows if it'll ever happen?
Right. That's why we always say yes to every project until it happens. And I guess once Gary passed, there was no one else.
Yeah, because he was starting a line for them, I believe, and on the QT.
Yes.
Let's see. Eric P says my LCS on week 3 of leak shipments without communicating with shops. Wow. 62 says Diamond screwed up my LC orders since the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Wow. Their warehouse is only 30 miles away. Holy cow. My comic shop, of course, uses Diamond, Lunar, and
Random House.
Random House, yeah. So I don't know who they use most.
Oh, what do they mostly sell?
Comics.
Right. So then that could be. I mean, if they're heavy with Marvel and DC,
Yeah,
then
I don't.
that's in
Yeah,
Random
I
House,
don't think they're heavy with Diamond anymore.
right? Because if they're not buying like the toys and stuff like that, that's usually what Diamond was fairly
Yeah,
used
they
for
don't
other
use a lot.
shops.
They're mostly comics.
Hmm.
Do, 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 do. Though I got a damaged comic this week. One of the comics I got was the Betty facsimile edition. Not my favorite. I was like, do I really want that one? But I was like, all right. So I ordered it. I think it was supposed to be in last week, and this week it was in, but they didn't have it set aside for me. They had a there's a little. This one isn't so badly damaged. There's like a little ding up in that corner.
8.6.
Yep, 8.6. And he's like, you want the damaged one? I'm like, you know what? Just because I have no faith the distributor is going to send you an undamaged one, I'll take this one, but I'll swap it out if you get a clean one in. He's like, all right.
Right.
I've done that. I've done that before and ended up with the damaged ones because and a clean copy never comes in. But I bought it just for the cover anyway, and it's not that incredibly damaged. More importantly, are her boobs okay? Yes, I think they're fun. They are undamaged. So is her butt. Eric P says, I got my copy of Betty as well. It was one of the books that Diamond shipped a week late. Yeah, I think this one was supposed to be in last week, and it wasn't. So probably they got caught up in the Diamond snafu too. We got to think about that. That's a long trip to the comic shop for you.
Yeah, I mean, so it's like it really takes about, I'll say, door to door from my place to the comic book shop itself. We're looking at, if the trains are running fine, about half an hour, 45 minutes, usually 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And
Now,
that's
one way?
just one way.
One way, yeah.
And then you spend about half an hour to an hour in the comic book
Right.
shop. It really depends on whatever. And then since I'm in the city, I'm going to walk around a little bit on a couple of stops in the area. Like I'll go to Book Off and then head back. And depending on the time of day, if I have a little extra cash, maybe I want to grab lunch in the city or what have you. And then coming back. And then coming back is where I really look at the schedule. Is it okay? So trying to get back without hitting the rush. If it's early enough, and if I time it correctly, I could take the Metro North back home.
Okay.
And that's a $5 ticket because it's not rush hour.
And the subway is $2.90 as I
exactly
had to pay.
And not only is the subway $2.90, the subway's $2.90 and it's less than 3 blocks away. So I could take it, right to my home. Or the MTA, which is a mile away, so it's a 17-minute walk away. Not that bad. It gives me the exercises, plus the calmness of just sitting on a Metro North train coming home, and the subway kind of is worth the extra $2. and that kind of, the peace of mind coming home, but it's like every hour.
Yeah.
So if I miss it, I'm not waiting because I could be home
by the time
that So it's like that's the only time where I really look at the schedule is coming back,
just to see if one of those Metro North
just to see if it's like, it'll be here in 5 minutes. I could be home in 20 minutes. So there's that, even with the few minutes walking, it's like, that would work. That would work well. And you could tell when I do that trip is that because there's enough time and quietness, I could do my comic book haul from the train on my way home. And there's only maybe like 2 videos like that. So I was able to just like sit down. And for some reason, it's the video without a voiceover, just the books that I got, and I'm on the Metro North train, that gets more views than my usual sitting down showing what books I got that day. Really strange. I do not understand it, the way social media works, but it's like, all right, that's what people like.
Who knows? Who knows? People even just the algorithm liked it for some reason.
Yeah, that particular day it happened to like it. Maybe it was early enough that nothing else is going on.
Because when you think about it, that's sort of the same as people who have a comic shop a 45-minute drive from them.
Yeah.
And they might not go every week. They're like, I go once a month. I go once every 2 weeks because it's a good chunk of time.
Yeah. And again, I have the kind of mindset is once I'm outside, I kind of want to stay outside.
Yeah.
For as long as possible.
Once you get out of the house, because you work there too.
Yeah, exactly. So sometimes I'm out, and I do have that mindset sometimes. When I'm out, I'm out. There's no rushing anything, but there are some days where it's like I'm out and I need to get back. And I've had gone to the shop and came right back, and it'd be like, just under 2 hours.
Right.
Just on that kind of cusp. And I know I have at least one or two shops not too far away from where I am that I could make that my home shop, but I don't find it as, I guess, friendly, for lack of a better term.
And
I know exists. There's one that's a couple of miles away from me that I have walked to, but it's not really set up to just walk in and browse.
Yeah,
you kind of walk
Midtown
in.
Comics, you can really browse.
Yes, exactly. And I kind of like that. I like to also discover stuff, look at stuff. Right. Where this other place, it feels like once you go in, it's like, okay, what do you want? I want these, because the books, he doesn't even have them really on a rack. They're just in boxes all over the place. Now, granted, he's been owning that shop long enough that he just doesn't care anymore. He hangs out there. If you happen to stop by, the new books are in this box, and that box.
Yep.
It's like, I don't want to do that kind of work. I used to do that. I don't want to do that now.
See, Comic Crack says, my main shop is about 30-minute drive from my place. I go once a week after I drop my son off because he's about halfway in between. Yeah, that'll help. My shop is about a 20-minute drive, but like this semester, I happen to have a class on Wednesday afternoons, and a matter of fact, that usually I take the train from Nanuet, New York. The next stop on the train is Pearl River, New York, which is where my comic shop is. Matter of fact, the comic shop is like right across the street from the train station. But still, I like drive to Pearl River. I mean, I drive to Pearl River, go to the comic shop, and then I drive back to Nanuet to the train station, only because even though I could just pop into the Pearl River and take the train from there, if I take the train from two different stations, I know there are going to be some nights where I get off at the wrong station. Where I'm like, I get off in Pearl River and go, oh, crap, my car's in Nanuet. Or I get off in Nanuet and go, oh, crap, my car's in Pearl River. I just know that's going to happen. So I just park in Nanuet all the time, and I'm good. Let's see. Tit Goblin says, chatting and hanging out is a more reason to go to my shops than the stuff I pick up. The staffs aren't friends or chat I don't frequent. Yeah, I go to the shop, and I like I said, when it's not like I had to go in the morning, but like when I'm not commuting in, I go and I meet my friend Rob there. We usually meet on Wednesdays, and I chat with John and Roy, who run the shop, and I chat with Rob, and I'll be there for an hour, easy.
Oh yeah, there's been times where I would go to depending on the shop. I've had so many different shops over the years. Is that I had one shop where you just walk in, you pick up your books, and you go, and that's it.
Right.
I had other ones, like the one I went to in college that I eventually worked there. I would be there for hours after class and just talking to people and stuff like that, where I'm going there to pick up my books, but then I created it was a group of friends that some of them I even still hang out with today, that they're, or at least not hang out, but at least close enough friends that I'm still in contact with from that shop. And then when I went to Cosmic Comics on 23rd, that was one to kind of go in, get your books, and go. But Hanley's was one where, I could be there for a few hours
Okay.
because they had so much stuff. But then talking to the employees that were there for a little while, there would be a chit chat. When Hanley's moved to like that newer location and got smaller, that was like I'm going in, pick up books, and going out. It was not the same type of.
They're not in Manhattan anymore at all.
No, not at all, not at all. And then there was a place in the village I used to go to, but I would go there just once in a while. But easily spend 2 or 3 hours there talking to the owner because he was a huge Spider-Man fan, but he was also a huge comic historian fan.
Okay.
And he would talk about stuff, and they had a story about why Silver Surfer 3 was hard to find because apparently the mob tried to get in the action and with the trucking and stuff like that. But that was so long ago, I don't even remember the full story.
That wasn't the mob. The warehouses were often mob controlled. That was the comic book dealers going to the distribution points and buying the comics that's the story that what's his name, Paulo? Robert Birnbaum, right?
Yeah.
That's the story that he tells because he was one of them. They'd go to the it was during the affidavit returns era.
Yeah.
Right.
And the reason you used to see low distribution on some of them was because the comic dealers would go to the distribution points who weren't really distributing them that much anyway. And they'd buy them right from the distributors who would then swear that they were they didn't sell and get credit for them. So that's why which is why you no longer see they're not hard to I think Conan #3 was one of them. That was always the big one. If you go back and look at the old price guides, it always said low distribution next to it, and it was more money. But it really wasn't low distribution. It was just different distribution because all the comic dealers were taking them and selling them at the shows.
Of course, then because the comics were reported as being selling low and getting destroyed, they got canceled.
Right.
Uh-huh.
So the comics that were actually the hottest ones among the in crowd were getting canceled faster because the
Neil Adams
affidavit model.
X-Men.
Yeah.
Neil Adams X-Men, Kirby's Fourth World stuff.
Green Lantern, Green Arrow.
Green Lantern, Green Arrow. All the classic stuff, which there's no shortage of copies. Because they were all being distributed by the dealers. They were all the companies didn't know.
And I wonder when they found out. I mean, I'm sure that the editors should know because they I'm sure they knew the stores because they hung out at the conventions.
I know that what's his name, Robert Birnbaum, has been telling this story for decades, and only recently have people started believing him, kind of thing. Only through them telling it. So because I know that because I've heard stories like Carmen Infantino never believed it, who was the DC's publisher at the time.
Right, but Carmine was not a fan turned pro, which means he did not know the dealers. Roy Thomas would know the dealers, so Roy Thomas would know.
Right, those guys who were selling the original art. Marv Wolfman and
the guys that were going to the show to sell this stuff. It's
which kind of explains why most of the comics that got canceled were the DC ones. Yeah, because if Carmine didn't believe them, he would not be able to react to it.
Right.
And Marvel would, and Roy, if Roy knew, and Roy probably did know. As soon as this happened with X-Men, he would probably get on the phone with the sub-distributors and, okay, do you guys need more copies? We'll sell them directly to you. We can't have these numbers. Otherwise, Cadence will be on our ass.
Yeah. It was also, I remember we discussed this before I read, I think from the same Robert Birnbaum article about him, it was Irvin Donefeld. He was the son, right?
Yeah.
Or when he was the one who inherited DC from his father, and in the 60s.
Yeah, he was in charge by then, yeah.
Yeah. And there was sort of an old boys network because all the distributors by that point were run by their father's sons too. So Donefeld would go around and talk to them all and see how things were working and selling. But then when he retired and Carmen Infantino took over, he didn't have that network. He didn't know that Donefeld would go around and check on all the distributors because they were the sons of all the other guys, so they all knew each other and so there was no longer anyone watching out for distribution like there used to be, because that was part of the job Carmen didn't know existed.
Yeah.
Let's see. Eric P says, my LCS is 1.5 miles from my house, and I'm currently going on Friday when they open. And I am friendly with some of the staff. That's good. It's always good to have a LCS.
My LCS, it's gotten bigger over the years, and the bigger it got, it made it hard to stand around and loiter.
Yeah,
because there are 2 shops in Lisbon. One stayed practically the same. I can go in there and we can talk for a while, but the place is kind of chaotic because you have to go around some things to get to the other things. But so after a while you get tired of looking at the same things. But the other one, when it started, so the guy had started an online business when nobody was doing online businesses. And then after 1.5 years, he opened a physical store, and that thing was the size of a broom closet. Basically, the shop did not exist to have new comics. It just existed so you could go and pick up your orders from previews. And usually I was there alone, so we could talk for a while. Especially because I got out of work at 7, at 6, and I would walk there, and so at 6:30 I would be there, and then it would close at 7. So
you can hang out for half an hour and talk comic.
Yeah. Then he moved to the new place, and the new place was a lot bigger and funny, but it was still him. He had an island in the middle of the shop where he could see everything, and people would walk up and talk to him. No biggie. And we actually had a place to sit down, and I would go in and I would sit down with previews on my lap and take note of everything that I was going to order, because if you want trade paperbacks, you make sure that you order them, because you have no idea if they're going to be. And the store was mostly trade paperbacks. It was like 50%. Because of the manga, it was 50% trade paperbacks and 30% merchandise, 20% new comics. But then they moved to the new place next to the Church of Scientology, and now he has people in the shop with him now, and most of them are not good to talk to. They're not really into comics. And he has an office on the top. On the top, it's not a top floor. I think doesn't actually have a floor, but he built a section, a floor section where he has his office. So I just have to look up and say, "Hey, how you doing?" but we don't talk much anymore. So nowadays you just walk around, and half of that thing are Funko Pops now, so which is no fun. So it's not really made for hanging out.
The chit-chatting days are over.
Yeah.
Well, Kit Cotlin says, Paulo, there's been a big push lately locally in the promotions to travel to Portuguese places. The ads are all art themed. Come see all our fantastic art. They seem well done.
Yeah, our redneck art.
You were saying, Wilson?
No, I was going to say, it's funny how, I've been to so many comic book shops that there are some where, you go in, you just go in to buy, and that's it. There's no really talking to the person at the counter. And then there were other ones where you can spend hours there talking to just somebody that works there,
Yeah.
because it's just like you kind of also you get the lay of the land, you get the feel of, oh, if I go this day, it's not as crowded.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have anyone bothering me, so to speak. I can take my time and look at the books, not have someone go, oh, excuse me, and just like jump in front of you to grab the books and stuff like that. And I'm trying to think about, because like, so you have Forbidden Planet has always been in the village, but it's always been in different little spots in a triangle area. When it had the really big story, it was nice, but you didn't talk to anybody at that. Also, I'm a high school kid, so I didn't know to be hanging out in a comic book shop. You go in, you buy your books, and go. This is not a library, kid. Get your stuff. That's kind of how it was with the Forbidden Planet in the village. But the Forbidden Planet down the street from Art and Design at the time, when it was on 59th Street, there was a Forbidden Planet that was smaller. The back issues were downstairs, and the new issues were towards the back. But they were at least a little more friendly.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could talk to the guys and stuff like that. Not as much, but it was like each shop had its own thing going on, so to speak. There was a place called Rogers Comics deep in the village. It was on a second floor, and it was on the second floor of like a regular apartment building. So you could see when you walk in, this would have been the living room. This would have been, but they gutted the place. So it's just one big open space. And I like going there because you can spend so much time just going through stuff. And I like going to Rogers Comics at the time because he would have books. He would have superhero books in other languages.
Ah.
And that always blew my mind. That until I discovered those, I didn't know that they were reprinting these overseas in another language.
Right.
And so that became kind of like a neat collectible thing that, if I could get my hands on that, because, here's Spider-Man, but again, in a different language, is reprinted. Things look the same, but the covers were usually a little off. And I couldn't, again, not knowing anything as a kid, why things seemed a little off. It's like, is it a different artist or stuff like that? Sometimes it was. So, again, at that time, I knew other countries exist. I just didn't know our stuff was going over there.
Let's see. SBBT says, howdy, gentlemen. I met Paulo buying comics from a trunk of a car in an underground parking lot.
Yes, that was in 1999 or 2000. That was the second. We had a mailing list. I found a mailing list for Portuguese fans called Comics PT. And that thing, after a while, we decided, well, let's get together. And first, the people from the north of the country got together, and then we decided to have one here down south. So a lot of people from came down, and we met up. In about a dozen of us met up in Lisbon, and one of the guys wanted to sell some old stuff he had in the back of his car, and I bought he had an old Alien Legion trade paperback, which I bought.
Let's see. Eric P says, speaking of TPBs, who picked up the Chris Russo Mini Marvels Hulk Smash TPB that came out this week? I did not know it was coming out this week until Chris posted it somewhere on, but I put it on my wish list for Amazon. There's a new Mini Marvels Hulk Smash. I don't know if it's a new release, because I have like a Spider-Man one. I don't know if it's the same one, but I did get the second Chris Russo X-Men cover. He's doing 4 alternate 7. I think the other one was like X-Men 8, just to confuse us. But luckily, the stories are continuing from series to series. So this one picked up where the other Chris Russo cover left off, even though it's a different series, in this weird... I don't know why the Louisiana X-Men and the Alaskan X-Men aren't getting along. One run by Rogue, one run by Cyclops. But they were both going to rescue the X-Men who were in a prison at their old mansion, which got turned into a prison. And so at the very beginning of this, Cyclops calls up Rogue and is like, listen, you guys stay at home. We're going to rescue these X-Men. Well, I don't want there to be trouble there. And she's like, I don't care if there's trouble. We have to rescue these X-Men. They're our friends. So then they both end up going, and they're fighting, and they're fighting with each other and the people in the prison. I'm like, why are they fighting each other? I have no idea.
Yeah, remember when superheroes used to fight villains?
Yeah.
And remember when villains were villains and not movie stars of their own series?
It appears that no mutants are villains anymore, except the security people are like brainwashed villains now. Like Juggernaut is on the team. At the end, we get I'm not sure who. We got the Blob there. And these are all brainwashed. I think that's a Jean Grey.
It could be Siren.
And I don't know who that person bending down is. But they're the team that's taking on the X. They're the and it continues in X-Men number 9. So I guess goes X-Men 8, Uncanny X-Men 7, X-Men 9, Uncanny X-Men 8, just to confuse everyone. That's how the Chris Russo covers are running.
Yeah, and the X-Men are showing up in Avengers as well because Jed McKay's running.
Yeah, and this is by who does this? The art is just okay, not the best Marvel art I've seen. The inking looks thin and not very good, and two people, Gail Simone, pencilers David Marquez and Edgar Salazar, inkers David Marquez and Victor Olazaba, colorist Matthew Wilson, letterer Clayton Cowles. The art was just okay. There's nothing spectacular about it. Once again, inking doesn't exist in comics anymore, and I kind of found to the detriment of this art. But there's my Chris Russo of the week. He had another cover come out. Oh, and I just saw Scott Koblish posted that he can't announce what he's working on yet, but it's going to be his largest cover yet. And he's been the one who's been doing those huge covers with 200 characters in them.
Okay, so we could speculate if he's already done the X-Men and he's done the Fantastic Four. The only other big group would have to be the Avengers.
Yeah.
That has technically everybody.
Right.
Because, my gut reaction would have been Spider-Man, but that's not enough.
Right. I would think it's the Avengers
Spider-Man
too. Yeah.
universe, so it would probably have to be the Avengers, which technically has everybody was an Avenger at some point or another.
Yep. Let's see. Tit Goblin says, I find the more cluttered and messy the store, the more character they have and the chatty they are. Yeah, clean big stores are just Funko shops staffed by clerks who have no connection to the culture. Yeah, I've seen that too a lot. So
yeah, it's been a while since I've been in a comic book shop that is a search for treasure, stuff like that. I know in Seattle, I don't remember the name because it's been 25 years. But when I used to do the Comic Cons, especially the big cons, I would usually would go there a couple of days before to be able to set up and stuff like that. So I always try to hit local comic shops. And when I went to Seattle, a buddy of mine lives in Seattle. He runs Committed Comics as his imprint. And he would take me to the various shops. And one place, I don't remember the name, was just must have been at one time a garage. Mm-hmm. Because it was just a big open space, and that just had rows and rows of cabinets that were converted to hold back issues and stuff like that. And he would just have things tucked in walls and stuff like that, where it's like, oh, here's where he had various prints that weren't necessarily, or it wasn't really organized. So you'd just be pulling stuff out. And I found a Michael Golden print that I never saw, only to find out later was part of a bigger portfolio. And it was a Spider-Man print of Spider-Man and Defenders. And I didn't know at the time this was part of the Marvel Team Up print that was done by SP Production or something like that.
I think I had those too. There was 2 volumes of it.
Right.
From
So
the early 80s.
I only ever found the golden print, not knowing what it was from.
Good one to find.
Yeah, it was a great one to find. So it's like I was able to pick that up. And then years later, show it to Michael to have him sign it, only for him to ask me to actually scan in a high res for him so he could put it into a book he was working on of the art of Michael Golden. And the introduction was being written by Todd McFarlane. And McFarlane credits that piece of artwork for the Spider-Man webbing he does.
Right.
Because McFarlane does say he didn't invent it.
Right.
He just ran with it, but it was Golden who invented it.
The spaghetti webbing.
Yes. Because as he says, Brevoort, not Brevoort, Tom DeFalco will say, "What's all this spaghetti webbing?" And that's why he calls it that, because Tom would call it that. But again, it was like one of those things that I found in a shop in Seattle, not having any idea what it was.
Yeah.
And those were fun to do.
Yeah.
Because it was like it would be the equivalent to what when we used to go to the dollar bins at the conventions, because nothing was ever in order.
No.
And it used to be fun going through it. Back when I was younger and I could bend and I could kneel and go through the long boxes and stuff like that. Now it's like, if it's not in order, I can't find it easy. I don't want to deal with it.
Let's see. It's SBPT's Tit Goblin. And they are all true. Nowadays, Lisbon is a hipster kindergarten.
It depends where you go.
Says... Eric P says it is new because there's a complete image of X-Men #1 covers in the back. Yeah, this one has it in. I don't even know. I just saw the image of I don't see it in the back of this one, but I'm not looking. But yeah, this is all from the X-Men #1 covers. He said Koblish recently did a cover for his Avengers Assemble #2. Yeah, I got that one too. That not quite as many characters on it, but ended up picking that one up. I usually search my when I get the final order cutoff email, I put Giarusso and Koblish into the search bars just to see if they have anything come down, just so I don't miss it, because I've missed stuff when I haven't searched for it in the email, because there's a lot of books there. And here's, I remember telling you about this last week. I got another omnibus. Once again, I've been looking on eBay for cheap omnibuses, and they seem to have certain ones that I don't know, they must have gotten rid of cheaply, because I got Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu. This is volume 2. And shipped and taxed was $38. And this, it's got a $125 price tag, full retail price tag on it. So there must be something happening with some of these omnibuses that didn't sell, and they cleared them out somehow. Because, I think it was $35 free shipping plus tax is the price. So it was around $38. So that's super cheap. And I bought it just because I've always been a Master of Kung Fu fan, but I mostly knew because my Master of Kung Fu era is from just after this. My Master of Kung this is 38 to 70, and my Master of Kung Fu era was probably mid 80s to the end. Mike Zeck stuff and Gene Day stuff, which is really good. But I also had some. I think I always I had a couple issues of the Jim Starlin stuff, and I had a bit of the Paul Galassi stuff, which is all the good Master of Kung Fu. Then there's just kind of bland Master of Kung Fu done by other people in there. So this one's got, let's see, who does this? Oh, collection editor, Corey Settlemeyer.
Mm-hmm. I never got, for example, Mardillo as a villain. I never got
Who?
Mardillo, the little talking robot.
Oh, I don't even remember him.
Yeah.
Does not sound familiar. But I didn't. Master of Kung Fu wasn't any of those. It wasn't a book that I got.
Yeah.
That I had collected.
It may have been a little after your time because it ended in the early 80s, right? I think it did.
Yeah, 1983, I think.
Yeah, and I basically started in '83, so
Yeah.
I've seen issues, and I knew it existed, and
Right.
if it, if he appeared in, I would get reprints easily a lot. Not reprints,
Mhm.
no. When I would find back issue stuff, and it usually would be 3 for $1.
Right.
Whatever that third book be, sometimes they were just like, okay, I need a third book. Sometimes I might grab something like that, but I couldn't even tell you a Master of Kung Fu story off the top of my head.
It was not really a superhero comic, but of
Right.
course it had some sort of superhero in, but it was more of a spy comic
Yeah,
with
Yeah.
some kung fu movie thrown in.
Yeah, and Shang-Chi would always, and he had this form of, he was sort of narrating the comic, but it was like you remember when in the old Silver Surfer comics when you would spend 5 pages complaining about man's inhumanity to man.
Mm-hmm.
Shang-Chi did that a lot.
He was always because he was in this deadly spy game, but he
Yeah.
was not really into it. He was more of a good guy. But it looks
Yeah.
like the writer
I would actually like to have seen a solo Blackjack storyline.
Doug Minch wrote almost all of this except for 3 issues by Paul Galassi, 1 issue by Archie Goodwin, and 1 issue by Scott Edelman.
Hmm.
And then Paul Galassi, it looks like, drew 38 through 40, 42 through 50. So there's a good what is that, 11 issues of Paul Galassi. That's usually the good stuff. Jim Craig drew issues 51, 54, 56 through 58, 61 through 63, and 65 through 66. That's probably a little more of the mediocre stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mike Zeck drew, looks like about 6 or 8 issues in the 50s and 60s. Sal Buscema drew 1 issue. Keith Pollard drew 1 issue in an annual, and Pat Broderick drew an issue. So Master of Kung Fu would be uneven depending on who the artist was.
Yeah,
Which is
and
why my year of
the first
Master of
4 or 5 Galatians were not that good.
Yeah,
Galassi had to get good.
right. That's where there's a lot of people like our friend Bunch who quit Master of Kung Fu after Starlin left and never really read it again.
and it's funny because as you mentioned all those names, I could kind of picture an image of each of those books. So I know at least I've seen them. And it's like I know I probably read one of each of those guys at some point or another.
Galassi was doing a lot of interesting layouts like this too.
Yeah.
In Master of Kung Fu. And
Yeah,
Gene Day did really interesting layouts too.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
Galassi was channeling Steranko, obviously, but
yeah.
So Gene Day managed to take some of the tricks that Galassi was doing and turn them into his own style.
Right.
That's why Gene Day stuff looks unique. He's obviously using another person's techniques, but
his sense of design was so good, and his sense of darks and lights was so good.
Oh yeah.
Like I said, Gene Day is just whenever I hear, and Bunch isn't the only one who I've heard say, after the Jim Starlin stuff, I didn't, buy any of the Master of Kung Fu. And I'm like, then you missed out on the Mike Zeck stuff, and especially the Gene Day stuff is some of my favorite comics. It's so good.
Jim Starlin only drew 2 issues.
Yeah, I know. It was downhill after there, though. They stayed on for Paul Galisi. I can't remember. Maybe I'm not remembering it right, and it was after Paul Galisi left. They left. So that would make more sense, I think. But I think Bunch did say after Jim Starlin left, he left, and there was only 2 issues. But yeah, I was happy to get this because this is also I still have my Master of Kung Fu issues, and I don't know if I have much in here. Oh, look, Sleepy Reader's with us. And he said Gene Day took the Galisi approach and amped it up to design illustration masterpieces. Yeah, he really did.
The final, when Fu Manchu came back for the final time, and he died again, when the issue where Shang-Chi, Reston, and Black Jack-Tar invade Fu Manchu's fortress, there are several pages of Shang-Chi having a fight with Death Dealer, and it's like you're seeing the entire level of Prince of Persia, but they're fighting in it. It's like a ballet.
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
Which is why I think Volume 3 might have all the Gene. I don't even know because this has got 40 issues in it, and it's only up to 70. Is there going to be 2 more volumes of Master of Kung Fu or 1?
It ends in 125. I think it may need 2 more.
Yeah, maybe 2 more, but yeah, I would definitely want the one with all that Gene Day stuff in it, just because it's just so nice. And I don't think it's ever been reprinted on good paper. But also that the Gene Day run had some really nice Gene Day covers and really nice. The guy before him was named Mike Zeck covers. There were some really nice Mike Zeck covers in that run too. That Razor Fist one I especially liked.
Yeah.
There was one cover that just said Razor Fist, and it was like the silliest character ever because he had no hands. He just had 2 swords for hands. And it was just him like raising his hands up and Shang-Chi above it. It was like a real good poster cover.
Yeah. The Mike Zeck stories were very good on action, especially when they introduced Midnight Carter. I liked Midnight a lot, and it's a shame it didn't really show up more than 3 or 4 times. But I guess they didn't want to have too many American characters showing up. I mean, as soon as Shang-Chi settles down with Nayland Smith, the action pretty much stays in the UK, and I think it was better because it made it easier to stay away from all the superheroics going down in New York.
Because most of the cast in Shang-Chi were MI6 or something. Because Black Jack-Tar was British. Who was the boss?
So the boss was Dennis Nayland Smith, who was a character from the Sex Romer novels.
Right.
Because he was the enemy of Fu Manchu. But in the comic, he is an old man. He's in a wheelchair. They kind of pretend that is sidekick because just like Sherlock Holmes, Nayland Smith had a Watson who was Dr. Petrie. Shang-Chi kills Dr. Petrie in his first appearance. But then he comes back many issues later. So Petrie's there. But it's not really important.
Daughter too, who was the romantic interest?
Yeah, Paulo Sui, who also comes from the novels. She was a sort of a femme fatale. She was into Nayland Smith. But because she takes the same elixir as Fu Manchu, she doesn't age, and Nayland Smith aged. So she stays the femme fatale. So it's kind of fun because So Nayland Smith, of course, is too old to take part in the adventures, but that's why they bring in Blackjack Tar and later Clive Reston and Leiko, who became Shang-Chi's girlfriend.
Okay.
She was an MI5 operative in Hong Kong.
That would make her MI6. I think MI5 is like the FBI. They're inside the country, and MI6 is like the CIA.
Yeah, but Hong Kong
Oh,
was a British colony.
yeah.
Hong Kong.
Oh, okay.
Hong
So
Kong,
that would count. That would count as inside the country.
yeah.
Ah, okay.
And then there's a bunch of other characters start become regulars. Follow Sui kind of has a. She ends up joining the British intelligence as well, and she works with a Russian defector called Dark Angel, and she also joins the crew. So all of a sudden, there's this big happy family, and they're all fighting bad guys. I mean, big happy family. They're all dysfunctional, but
Sleepy Reader says Razor Fist stands out. LOL.
yeah.
Was Razor Fist earlier? Was he from earlier in the series and then he reappeared again in the Jean Day issues, or was he in the Jean Day issues only? I can't remember that either.
He when he appears is working for a guy called Carlton Velcro, and Velcro had appeared before in the early 70s. Then he comes back, and I think that's where Razor Fist first shows up, when Velcro comes back.
Okay. Razor Fist. He's got no fist. Two swords for arms. And no forearm. How does he do anything besides slice people up? I guess that's his raison d'etre.
Yeah, I kind of prefer when they introduced Zaran the Weapons Master, because he can use anything. He can use anything.
Yeah.
But they never made him do much. I mean, he was full of potential as a villain, especially because he wasn't truly a villain. As ultimately he was a mercenary. He could have played with the good guys if needed, even if they wouldn't have much reason to trust him. And but he was kind of angry because Follow Sui had dumped him. She kind of used him in a few issues, and he was very pissed off about that. And he wanted, instead of taking it out in Follow Sui, he wanted to take it out on Shang-Chi.
I think this is a John Cassidy cover. Yeah, John Cassidy.
Nice.
So that's the late great John. I wouldn't have recognized that as him. Maybe because of the flowing fabric. He usually doesn't do fabric. And it's not so good, the fabric. It's just okay. John Cassidy and Paul Mounts. Paul Mounts is a good colorist. Yeah, I don't know if I'm seeing if I recognize any of these little covers. I don't know that I have any from this part of the run. None of the covers look familiar. Oh, he fights Doctor Doom. I gotta check my database and see what issues of Shang-Chi I have, just to see. I haven't looked at them. I haven't looked at these older ones in a while. Let's see. What do I have it under? Is it under Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu? Hey, that's the new stuff. Maybe it's under M for Master of Kung Fu. I don't remember what it said in the indicia. How come they're not in my database? MAR. There they are, Master of Kung Fu. Got 22, 30. What do I have in here? This is 38 through 70. Oh, I have 37 through 40, 46, 52, and 56. That's all. So I have, there's 4, 5, 6, 7 issues from this run is all I have. Okay. Now I know why none of the covers look familiar. Only 7 out of the 33 do I have. But that's why I wanted volume 2 also. And for, like I said, I don't know what it is where some of these are showing up cheap. Sleepy says Razor Fist was in Galassi issues too. Okay. Want to see? Here's a first issue I picked up that was pretty good. It's called Dead Samurai. This is a Bill Sienkiewicz cover. It's from Wake. It just says Wake on it. What's the name? Wake Entertainment. Dead Samurai #1. And the cover is really nice. It's I don't think it really comes across on screen, but this white right here is a silver metallic. So I think the paper itself is somehow metallic because there's a metallic sheen. Even though it's, printed over with ink, there's a metallic sheen to the cover. It's got it feels really interesting. And it's a heavy paper stock. So the cover is part of what sold this to me. And it's $6, but it's 30 pages of comics, which is about, the same as a $4 20-page comic. So it really wasn't. And it's by some people I don't think I've heard of. The writer is John Dahlmeyen. The artist is Ryan Benjamin. I've heard of him, right? You guys heard of Ryan Benjamin?
He's old school Wildstorm.
Yeah, old school Wildstorm. Yes. That's
Okay.
what I was going to say that he did do some images. Yeah. Colorist is Alex Sinclair. I've heard of him.
Yeah, he is old school Wildstorm as well.
Yeah. Letterer, Josh Reed. But pretty good comic. I mean, Ryan Benjamin's a solid artist. Alex Sinclair's a solid colorist. And it's, I guess you'd call it historical fiction because it takes place 16th century feudal Japan, the time of the samurai. And it takes place in a lord's castle. And zombies attack them.
Zombies in Japan?
Zombies in Japan. So the story starts out with people on the road, and there's one samurai protecting this young girl. Then it flashes back to 3 days ago, and it gives us the story of the zombies overrunning the castle. And the lord of the castle, his wife and kids get turned into a zombie. And the lord of the castle ends up committing seppuku because he allowed everyone to die. And his samurai was his second. And then his samurai was about to commit seppuku too, but then he saw the lord's daughter was still alive. So he ran out and got her. And that's when we're back to the beginning of the story when he's out on the road protecting the daughter. So I guess it's a little lone wolf and cub with zombies. But it was good stuff. I enjoyed it. I'll pick up some more of it. And I especially liked it looks like there's a Tim Vigil cover too. There's a Tim Vigil cover.
Oh.
This is next issue. There's another Bill Sienkiewicz cover with a horse looking scared. But I really liked I liked the production value. As well as liking the comic, I liked the production value of it. So I like when, comics give me a reason to buy the individual comic rather than it just being a self-covered floppy, let's churn this out just like last month thing. So I got to say the extra production value of this sold it to me. But yeah, that silver paper is nice. Like I said, I wish it just looks white on screen, but the silver flecks in it when you see it. So it's really nice. Good stuff.
Yeah, the silver on it does look pretty cool. I do know that there's a when I printed some stuff with Apex Comics, we printed a couple of silver covers, and what it was like basically the paper itself is already silver and it has the foil on it, and then it was printed right over it, and we got that kind of effect. On the back was like it was an ad that was like on a bullseye, or at least it was in a circle, and so the rest of the ad was left to be white so it can have the silver come through.
Which is sort of this. They got the circle.
Yeah, so
well,
it was the opposite.
See the silver there.
So it was the opposite. So the printed image was in the center.
Okay,
the
whole
of
rest of the page
was like a mirror finish silver.
Oh, wow.
That looked great, but when you see it packed up together, if anything happened to the box, it would damage the that silver altogether.
Yeah, this silver seems to have a pretty tough texture, and it's not, it's not like mirror silver. It's flecked. It almost looks like the silver on a scratch-off ticket.
Okay, yeah.
Which also can be very gray, but it also can be silver that you scratch off on the lottery ticket or something. It almost looks like that when it's by itself. I like that it's got a really good feel to it. That's what I like about it too. I like when my comics feel good. A good tactile thing. Because I'm going to be holding these comics in my hand and reading them.
Yeah.
Which is funny because I was telling you about Jupiter's Circle and Jupiter's Legacy. I actually, being that I read, which one is the first one? Jupiter's Circle digitally, because I don't have physical copies. I then read Jupiter's Legacy digital too, even though I have copies of it. I was like, you know what? I may as well, to keep the experience kind of the same, I'll read this digital too. But once again, double page spreads do not work digitally.
Yeah.
And though Jupiter's Circle had none, Jupiter's Legacy had 2, I think, in the 10 issues. But I was like, because it doesn't hit you twice. It shrinks it down to half the size. It's like, But those are, if you've, but what's weird and what prompted me to read these two is they're coming out. I think Dark Horse is publishing this version because I thought it was a library edition. Now here's the problem. The original one with Frank Quitely is called Jupiter's Legacy. The prequels are called Jupiter's Circle. The sequel is Jupiter's Requiem, I think. And then I think they're coming out with one right now, which I don't know if it's still called Jupiter's Requiem or it's called something else. But when they print them in trade paperbacks, even though Jupiter's Legacy is the main story, the prequel, Jupiter's Circle, is now called Volumes 1 and 2 because chronologically they take place first. So now, if you want to read the Frank Quitely ones, you have to read Volumes 3 and 4. And in the new library edition, which for some reason is $50 and not the usual $35 or whatever Dark Horse puts them out for, is called Jupiter's Legacy, with Volumes 1 and 2 of Jupiter's Circle. I was like, what?
They've got to figure out their branding.
Yeah.
That's because I think Jupiter's Legacy was the original series, but then Quitely is slow. And it was, a hit series, so they said, let's get some more out. Of course, Mark Miller can certainly write more, and they had other artists doing it. So now, Jupiter's Circle is coming out before the end of I ended up not getting, like, this is the first time I've read Jupiter Circle, just because I was like, if Frank Quitely's not drawing it, I'm not terribly interested in getting it. And they were okay as prequels. They were okay stories that filled you in a little bit on what happened, but they're not really that necessary. It's the Quitely stuff that's top shelf. A top shelf superheroes solving their problems through violence story.
I did like, what was it? They had an animated series.
No, they had a live action
They had a
series
live
on
action.
Netflix.
I think I enjoyed what I watched.
It was okay.
Yeah.
The problem was that Jupiter's Legacy is 10 issues in total, 2 5-issue series. It's extremely fast-paced. I mean, you could read all 10 issues in under 2 hours, if not in an hour. Very fast-paced. When they did the 8, I can't remember if it was 6 or 8 issues of Jupiter's Legacy on Netflix, they got through the first half of the first issue. So the extremely fast-paced superhero story became this, it wasn't bad, but became this slow plot because they couldn't, all the superhero stuff that was going on was too fast. It was too expensive to do. So they had kind of all the behind the scenes interpersonal, because the story is about, it takes place in, I guess, our day and age. Well, like I said, the superheroes have all been around for 50 years. They're all kind of old, but they age slowly. But there's a lot of them are still gray. And the two main guys are the Utopian, who's like Superman. He's the leader. He's the most powerful one. And he's kind of a force of good. He always wants to do good. And then and they're all college friends too. So they've all known each other a lot of their life before they mysteriously became superheroes. And I can't remember. I don't think it's his brother, because his brother was betrayed or something, but his brother was far away. It was one of his old college friends, now in their older age, kind of wants to take over the US because he's like smart and wants to take over the government and solve humanity's problem. And the Superman guy, the Utopian, was like, no, we can't. He's like, you are not as smart as you think you are, and we're just going to screw things up if we try to play in politics. So the first arc of the story was, once again, the superheroes have known to fight, so they fight each other. The old friend betraying the Utopian with the help of the Utopian's son, so they can take over the U.S. and try to fix all the problems. And the Netflix show was all about that betrayal. It was all about the machinations going on behind the scene to lead up to the Utopian being betrayed, plus some of their origin. But the Utopian wasn't even betrayed at the end of the series. So it was like, and that all had happened by issue like 2 of the series. So all the fast-paced superhero action we never got to see on screen. Probably because it was too expensive to do, too.
Yeah.
I wonder if Jupiter's Legacy was not a dusting off of an old Youngblood proposal.
It's not the newest story in the world.
Mm-hmm. Because when you want to do if you want to do a Superman analog, and you want to do a Superman something that where some of the heroes take over the government, it makes more sense to do with it in one of the Image universes.
Yeah.
So either at Wildstorm with doing Wildcats, or but it makes a lot more sense with Youngblood, because if you think of Utopian as supreme.
Mm-hmm. And like it's not, it is hardly original,
Mm-hmm.
but it is really well done. And like in Mark Miller sometimes telegraphs what's coming, but
Yeah.
Frank Quitely pulls it off so well. Because after, like, I would say there's like, I guess there's 3 acts, maybe 4. But after the first act, the betrayal of the Utopian, the second act takes place 9 or 10 years after. And they've been running, the world for, and of course they screwed up. So the Utopian son who helped betray him is now president of the United States, and the smart guy, the Utopian's friend, is the one with all the plans trying to fit. But things are not going as expected. But they've captured all the superheroes and villains in the world. If you're not working for them, you're in jail. Except at the end of the first story arc, there was, besides Utopian's son being a screw up, he had a daughter who was a screw up too. But she
Supreme. Those are Kid Supreme and Lady Supreme.
like, it's not the most original story. Kid Supreme and Lady Supreme were, of course, rip-offs of Superman 2. So, but what happens is, and there was the son of the guy who was betrayed, which you found out more in the who I think. No, it wasn't you. He was just a guy. Sky Fox, I think, was his name, or something Fox. He had been missing since the 60s. He had been he dropped out in the 60s and became this sort of fighter for the people. He was like, superheroes are just protecting the ruling class. Why are we doing this? But eventually the superheroes turned against him, beat him up. He was one of the more powerful ones too. But before he left, he popped in. He also had a little kid who was his son. This is in the 60s. He popped into his son's mother's. He's like, he had a flash. You got to get a radio too. This guy was so smart. He, like, with a radio and a flashlight and a few household parts, he built he's like, you're never gonna have. I don't think you're gonna inherit my superpowers. So let me give you this power rod. So he just like built this and gave it to. He's like, your mother's gonna hold on to it for you until you're old enough. So he's like. So the 2 main characters in the second arc are the daughter of the Utopian, and this guy with no superpowers, but he's get this power rod that can make him do all sorts of magical stuff. And they have a son who's about 9 or 10 years old. And this kid has 100% inherited the Utopian's powers, brains, and curiosity and goodness. So it's now this like 10-year-old kid who starts the process of fighting the powers that be in the United States. And there's just some moments he pulls off perfectly, like especially like the kid is like this, they're all underground. They haven't been seen for 10 years because if they show up, they're going to be put in prison by all the heroes who now are under this guy's tutelage, who are, all real powerful. And so there's this one guy. Have you seen Chitty Chitty Bang Bang?
Yeah.
You know the kid catcher from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang?
Yes.
There's a character who's just like this. Who is the one in charge of tracking down the rogue superheroes and villains. And he was just sort of a minor supervillain. But he's like, you know what? I've really found my place. Because he's really good at tracking down and capturing villains. And they show him doing that a little bit. But they're always on the watch for where these superheroes are. And they started to notice something. There were unusual rescues in Australia, which was this kid. And there's just one great moment where, like I said, they've been underground. The kid's doing some rescues, but this, chitty chitty bang bang guy laid a trap for him. And the kid, of course, fell into the trap. And he's just like, he's just like, mommy, because he's like a 9-year-old kid. And the chitty chitty bang bang guy is like, I didn't expect you to call for your mother. But of course, his mother is the utopian's daughter, who is really powerful too. So all of a sudden, she hears this, across of Australia, and just shows up and kicks this guy's ass. And that's the beginning of the second arc. But of course, Frank Quitely pulls it off so well, and Mark Miller gives us the line, "Mama's always listening." And it's just got moments in there that are just pulled off so well. Even though his mother's coming to rescue him, but it's just pulled off so well. And they set up this, chitty chitty bang bang guy is so evil that it's just like. And then of course his father shows up too, and that's the beginning of the next act where it's like, well, we got to get the gang together and kick these superheroes' asses. So it's like there's nothing new about it, but it's just done so well that it's become one of my favorites. Like that, you can read it in an hour or two. So it's like that's one I can always pull. That's because I was reading it while I was watching the football game Thursday night. I was just like, I may as well keep going and read this one digitally. So it's definitely, matter of fact, it made me. We'll have to talk about it next week. My blog this week is, I told you one of my students asked me what my favorite comics were. And I finally made a list. It's going to be in 2 parts on my blog of my favorite comics. One is just sort of graphic novels and finished series. And the other is like long running continuing series like Usagi or Savage Dragon. But Jupiter's Legacy is on that list too, just because it's become one of my favorites. It's just a fun superhero story that's pulled off real well.
I don't know if I have a favorite list. Like,
it's tough.
It is tough because there's so much has come out, and there's so much stuff that I know I read and enjoyed at the time, and may have never gone back to it.
Right. Well, I put all the stuff on I've gone back to. It's kind of like. I know it has lasted over the years, but like I said, it's like I wouldn't put what's not on it is like Omega the Unknown. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite series from my childhood. I still like it, but that's not something I'd recommend that, people go out and read because it's such a weird, quirky series.
Yeah. And, like, where do you fit that into?
It's not great. Mm-hmm. I just like it a lot. And part of the reason I like it is it gave me a lot of ideas about behind the scenes in the creation of comics, just that series alone.
Right.
Because it's only like, 11 or I don't even know how many issues, 10, 11, 12. But it like changed direction like twice. And I'm like, why is it? And you could just see, like, as a kid, me analyzing, going, oh, it must not be. Because by the time, it wasn't a comic I bought off though it was around the time I was buying comics. I got the whole series all together from someone who was getting rid of it, probably on one of my kid excursions around the neighborhood. So it was like a finished thing to me. So I was like, oh, it must not have sold well. That's why they got new people. And stuff like one of my favorite covers ever. It's like Omega the Unknown #5 or something like that. It's a John Romita cover with Omega the Unknown versus the Wrench. And it's got this big guy in coveralls on the cover with this glowing wrench that's, he's like, I'm going to kill you, Omega, with my super wrench or something like that. But then when you read the actual story, it's just about a plumber. He's not a supervillain. He's about a plumber who gets caught up in the plot and something happens to it. He's in no way, shape, or form a supervillain. And that made me go analyze. I remember as a kid analyzing, going, oh, they made him a supervillain on the cover to sell the book because the cover's more interesting than if this guy is just a plumber talking to him. So I was able to figure out stuff like that about the creation of comics, reading Omega the Unknown. But like I said, it's not one I'd tell you it's one of my favorites. But I'm like, you don't have to read them unless you're really curious. Omega the Unknown is not. You're not going to read that and go, I love comics now. Not going to happen. Now let's see another comic I got this week. In Police. This is the one I compare to Blade Runner. Because there are clones. Clones have been outlawed now. But 30 years ago, cloning was invented. And people who couldn't have children bought clone babies. But then it turned out clones were unstable. And when they reached adulthood or in their at any time, they could turn psycho and start killing people. So they outlawed clones, and they created the, I forget what the actual name of them is. Their nickname is the Skin Police. Sort of like in Blade Runner, the replicants were called skin jobs. Well, here they're called, and you can't tell who's a clone or not either without an autopsy. And if they hunt you down and kill you, and you're not a clone, they don't tell anyone. So the people are kind of mad at them. And in this one, and we don't know who's the heroes or the villains. Like there's sort of a Harrison Ford type, the best of the Skin Police is the hero in this, and he's just like, hey, it's my job to hunt these guys down before they kill people. But then we're introduced to a clone underground. And one of the things, too, is there's some sort of medicine the clones can take to keep them alive after they turn. Like, what happens is they turn, go psychotic, and then are usually killed. But they've discovered, like the powers that be don't want to provide, nobody knows they're this medicine. They don't want people to know. I guess probably it's too expensive. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want the liability. They just want the clones dead. So at the end of this one, we get this is our Harrison Ford guy, the top Skin Police guy. He finds out there's some sort of raid going on at the hospital, at this hospital. We find out that his former partner is in a coma. So there's these group. Here's our group of, and it turns out in the underground there's a couple of different groups. The underground is this one group who's working on the medicine and trying to figure stuff out peacefully. And there's this other group who wants to fight back against these guys who are killing them. So this other group is fighting back against they're trying to go in and kidnap or kill this guy's old partner who's in a coma in the hospital. But he finds out about it and comes in and, does them in. But at the end, he finds out, he's like, what is it? He calls the clones dupes. So he gets in a fight and kills this big dupe, and he pulls off his mask and he sees he's got black eyes, which means he's turned. And he's like, a dupe? How is a popped dupe leading a kill squad? What the hell's going on here, partner? So he's about to find out, that thing that people have been lying to him too, because as far as he knows, once you pop, you're psychotic. He doesn't know that there's medicine to bring you back, at least a little. The guys are pretty messed up, but it's been a good. And I found out, I don't know if I said this. I think Jordan Thomas, and that's Daniel Hete.
Hete.
What was that?
Hete.
Carl spelled it for me, Heetee. That's what Daniel told him.
No, it's Daniel Hete.
Hete? Maybe it's Hete, not Hiti. Hete must be.
Hete. Yeah. Where I saw in his Instagram, he was from Oviedo or something.
Ah. But Carl said he asked him, because Carl is editing. Is he editing this book? Yes, he's the editor on this book now, because he's working for Oni Press now. Carl Bowlers, who we worked with at Marvel, and I worked with at Bad Idea. So he's like, I Hete. But it's not. I was saying Getty because I had no idea. But it's an H sound. Hete.
Yeah. Oh.
That sounds better than Hiti.
Oh, it's a suburb of Madrid. Okay, yeah, it's in central Spain.
He's a good artist. He's the one who did Uber with Kieran Gillen. Which is a book I wish they could end, but Avatar's been in trouble, financial trouble. Oh, I also got I don't think I've shown, got a few new Jersey cards with patches of Jersey on them. Got a Davis Webb. Where's my Daniel? I think this one. I got a Daniel Jones, who's just cut by the Giants. I got a Kerry Collins, who is a quarterback of the Giants. This little inset here is a piece of their jersey, supposedly game worn. I just find these fun to buy, and they're like $3 or $4 a piece. And a Reuben Randall, who is a wide receiver for the Giants. I just discovered these this year, and I got like 15 of them now. Well, like I said, they're super cheap.
Should make a whole new jacket out of it.
Yeah. Whoops, that one's falling out. It's weird because you have to get different size sleeves for them. Because these cards, you probably can't see, are 3 different thicknesses. Because they're a jersey sandwiched in between a card, two parts of a card. So it's like I had to get thicker hard shells for them, but some of them, like this one, just slips right out of the hard shell because it's too thick. So I got some skinnier ones now too to find. And this one is so thick it would barely fit in the hard shell. But another fun thing to collect. And you can't go too crazy with them.
No, because you could easily fall down a rabbit hole.
Well, what it is too, if I'm only collecting the jersey ones, that limits me. Like I've collected football cards before in the 90s when everyone collected football cards, and you can very quickly build up a huge collection of worthless junk.
Oh yeah, I have a lot of those cards, especially the football ones. And I don't like football. I just have a bunch of the cards. I think I even still have cards I haven't opened up from Fleer. But those, at least I could say, well, I didn't pay for those because I got them at Marvel.
Right.
You know, you say, oh, let me get a box of cards. And if you're not specific what you're going to get, you're just going to get handed a bunch of cards, boxes of cards.
And I just found out that they call, like in the 80s and 90s, was a boom time for sports cards and other cards too. Hello there, Mind the Comics.
Hello.
Hi all. And they now call that period junk wax.
Oh wow, okay.
And the reason is nowadays when you buy sports cards, they have stuff like this. You know, one a box or something, but they have they call them, I don't know why they're called parallels. But there's a set type of cards that call parallels that have like foil on them.
Right. The parallel cards go back a ways.
Yeah?
Yeah, because the Star Wars cards.
Oh, they were parallels?
They had parallels. And the only difference was the border. It was
the
a red or a blue border.
So I don't know why they're called
red, blue, and green. Those are the parallel cards.
Okay.
And what there basically is a subset. So you can either get all the, usually, like, depending on the color, it's how the most of them you got in a pack of cards. So you would get, like, if a pack of cards were, like, 7 cards per pack, and then 1 sticker, there would usually be the yellow cards for Star Wars. But they might be a blue or a red. The blue, there was a less printing of them, and the red
Okay.
was even less than that. So they made them even harder to find.
Well,
So you can make a card set. If it was 110 cards, you would have 110 yellow cards. You could have 110 blue cards and 110 red cards. Those are the parallels.
Okay.
And each one would be a lesser printing, and that's why those would be like they were like early chase cards before they made
right.
the 9 subset chase cards. That would be a thing. So they've had these for a while.
Okay.
And they
It
had
was a
different
parallel set within the set.
Correct.
So what it is nowadays, when you buy sports cards, you've got the regular card, you've got the parallel, you've got the chase cards, you've got the other subsets. They have other sub. So in one set of, let's say, football cards, there could be 10 different Patrick Mahomes cards because he's one of the most popular players, and he'd be in the chases, he'd be in the parallel, he'd be so in one set there might be 10 Patrick Mahomes cards. In the junk wax era, there was only one Patrick Mahomes card when they were printed to death. So you didn't have a chance to get 5 different versions of the most popular player. There was only one version, and it was printed to death.
Yeah.
So and of course there were wax packs, hence junk wax.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like that era is just, there are still endless unopened packs from that era.
Yeah, I still got a few unopened packs of stuff. And now, I was into basketball for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the only cards that are worth anything are any of the basketball cards that might have the Menendez brothers in the background. That's the cards
that's worth something.
That people, that they're like trying to get, because they recently found that there is another basketball card that they were at as well. And people didn't, no one really pays attention to the characters in the background, and they're usually blurred. But there are a few cards out there where, from that junk era,
courtside.
Yeah, because they're courtside guys. So,
want to show some of your comics from last week?
Sure. So here is Amazing Spider-Man 62, where it looks like he has a brand new costume.
Looks like Spawn.
Similar to Spawn, in a way. So it's
the
like
eyes a little bit.
It's just silver
collar.
It's that silver costume with I don't know if he has a cape or a scarf. There's a lot of Spawn going on there.
Let me blow that up. Hold on. There we go. Oh, yeah. Well, Spawn is kind of close to Spider-Man, and Spider-Man is now kind of close to Spawn with that cape.
Yep. No idea what's going on in this story, but it's leading up to the 8 deaths of Spider-Man, which I guess is the new crossover thing, because I believe it's it's ending one of the runs.
The 8 deaths of Spider-Man.
Here he looks like he's meeting up with so it looks like it's a Spawn character meeting up with an Eric Larson character. I don't know what's going on there.
Vaguely reminds me of Cerebus too, for some reason.
He looks like the Violator, so it's still Spawn related.
Maybe it was just the snout reminded me of Cerebus.
Maybe. But looking forward to reading that to see what's going on. That'll be a Saturday read. All these books I have on top of my copier. And let's see. Keeping up with the Spider-Man family, we got Spider-Boy, issue number 13.
There's Spider-Girl in there too?
I'm guessing so. It may be introducing a new Spider-Girl into the series.
That is weird placement of those 2 figures with his head directly in our crotch.
Yep. So we know John Romita Sr. would have said, no, you gotta separate those characters.
We don't want her birthing him,
Exactly.
because that's one that would get a comedy version made up of it in the bullpen.
Yeah, definitely would be. Let's see. Superman issue number 20. And you
The
can
classic
recognize that hand is Doomsday.
hand coming out from the grave cover.
He's back. But hand coming out of the grave cover, this one looks not unique, but it's
well done.
It's pretty well done.
It's a nice hand. They did a good job. Good job with the logo placement.
Yep. Just not covering it too much, just enough. That was a big no-no for a while, too. Do not cover the logo. Gotcha Man, issue number 5.
Who is doing those Alex Ross looking covers?
Let's see if they have it. Cover artist A, B, C. All right, so cover B is Stanford Green. I know this doesn't look like Stanford.
No, that's not Stanford Green. He's
okay. The next person they have is Francine Diago.
Okay.
And Mustafa Musa. No, that's not Mustafa.
Does the UPC tell us which version it is?
00511. So I'm guessing that's cover one?
Cover 1.
Okay. So then that would have to be Inca Miranda.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm saying her first name correctly.
Let's see. Let's get it big.
Iñaki.
Iñaki?
Yep.
Okay.
Iñaki Miranda. Okay.
Yeah, so that I would guess that's the person because the other artists I recognize their names. And
Infinity the timey-wimey-limey says logo remains legible, so Prime Directive was not broken.
Exactly.
My student who doesn't like us to read his type did another project this week. I was like, where the type was legible, but he distorted it a whole lot. I'm like, you just don't want us to read your type, do you? He's like, it's not cool that way.
The next book I have here, which is I really like this cover, is Thundercats number 10. It's a nice close-up shot of his head.
What character is that?
That is, I believe, Sly.
Sly is the leader of the mutants.
Of the mutants, yes.
Sly and the Family Stone.
So, big adventures as always with Thundercats.
Thunder, thunder, Thundercats.
And in the Thundercats family, we have Chitara issue number 5. And the logo's on the bottom.
Look at that.
And then the last book, but not least, Savage Dragon.
Savage. With the guy who kind of reminds me of Doomsday, because he's got horns on his knuckles.
Yeah. And then he has a kind of a Jack Kirby headdress.
Yeah.
And the back cover is kind of the same, but just with a different artist.
Huh.
This might have been the book I showed last time.
Yeah, I think I remember.
It might have been the only book
Dragon
that I showed last week.
62 Lefty Blue says Ben Harvey is another artist for Marvel that looks like Alex Ross. Okay. Oh, I have to show you guys something. It's the thing I posted on our Marvel group this week.
Oh, yes.
Somebody came into my LCIS with a piece of art and said it used to hang in the Marvel offices, but so far no one on Facebook recognizes it. and said it was done to try to pitch Marvel from Nestle to use their superheroes to sell comics, but to sell candy. But everybody on all the old Marvel people think it's more likely that Marvel did it in-house to pitch Nestle. So let me see. Do I have it open? There it is. And we were trying to figure out who did it. It looks like a marker comp, which is what you advertising places would do as they were putting together stuff to show. Where'd it go? It's not in this. Hold on. It has to be in, oh no, I think I can use, let me try this again. Share screen, window. Will it show up in window? No, it doesn't. Chrome tab. No, I have to. I use 4 desktops and I have to move it into this desktop because it doesn't share stuff in other desktops. So let's see, we got to move it there. Now I can share. Pick the right window. There we go. So here it is. Some people said it could have been John Romita and the Raiders who did this. Some people thought it might be Tom Morgan. But I don't. It could, like I said, it could have also be done at the ad agency. But it looks too good to have done at the ad agency to me.
Yeah, it looks to me like Morgan aping Romita, and Morgan can do a really good Romita.
And I think it's a marker comp. But then Joe Rosas said it might be colored on a stat, which is what they had to do sometimes, is color over a stat. And he said it ended up looking like marker.
Yeah, sometimes it can on a stat, though it's a pain in the ass to work on a stat.
Yeah.
But I could see some places like on the Spider-Man's crotch area there. That you kind of get that effect when you're coloring on a stat. And there are like crumples in the paper that reminds me of a stat. All those little crumples there.
And maybe this yellowing could be a stat too.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. I thought it was a marker comp, in which case it would be done on marker. And we're trying to get we'll have to Jason Liebig to identify when these Nestle's Crunch wrappers were for, since that's his thing now. Candy history. But that definitely doesn't look like a advertising guy's Hulk.
No, not at all. I've seen quite a few comps at Marvel from advertising agencies, and they were really bad. At one time, they pitched. I don't know. I've seen it in the bullpen, so you must have seen it. The covers that an agency was trying to pitch, and it was just like it looked like an ad agency trying to do a comic book cover. It was boring. It looked like they were trying to do a book cover with comic book elements. And I remember Cable was one of them, and it was just so badly done. It's like, why pitch a comic book cover to a comic book company and not be good?
Yeah, like this looks too good to be from an ad agent. I think I would. Yeah. I mean, unless there was some artist at the ad agency who was also a comic artist, and I think it comes from the '80s. They said, but. Not 100% sure, but I think it's a neat little find.
Yeah.
For whoever, and the guy has had it for. He said it used to hang in the Marvel offices, but that was before our time.
Yeah.
Like I said, so far no one has recognized it who worked at Marvel. So, but I just put it. Well, it's only been a few days, so we'll have to see. I'll have to post it on my main page too.
And no information on the back that you're aware of?
It was covered with a mat. So next time I'm there, I'll see if we can take that off and see if we can get some information from it. So
okay.
He just remembered it as I was leaving the store and told me to take a picture of it. post it. So I was like, okay, well, we'll come back and try to find some information. It wasn't in a frame, but it was matted with front and back. But pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. The things that can walk into a comic shop.
Oh yeah. I do chuckle when it's like, oh, it used to hang up in the Marvel offices, and it's like, yeah, that seems to have almost like the same feel as when I've talked to people and they say, oh yeah, I have a script at Marvel. It's on one of the editor's desks. Yeah, sure it is. Which editor? And they
One
will
of the
name
editor's trash cans, maybe.
And
That
it's like,
could be it.
hey, you great. You gave somebody a script. Means nothing. Did you get paid for it? Is it in production? It's on somebody's desk means nothing.
Eric P. asks, was there a lot of non-comic book art at the Marvel offices? No.
No, it was mostly all the posters Marvel made.
Mostly framed posters were everywhere.
They were most all framed posters. There was a few original artwork.
In individual editors' offices,
right?
They may have had some framed original art stuff.
But
around the hallways and in the bullpen, it was all framed posters.
Yes, exactly. And depending on the floor, they would be different stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I do recall that one of the women in the accounting offices had an original piece of McFarlane artwork that was gifted to her. And the story goes is that someone spotted it, knew it was original, and replaced it with poster art. And the person who had it wasn't aware at the time that it was changed out. So it was like, I'm guessing that whatever cover it was painted as well right on the artwork. If it was used for not a cover, but from one of those promotional things like the puzzle, or because once McFarlane got hot, everything Spider-Man was McFarlane for a while. And so it was a story of how artwork was framed and someone switched it out. But that person got caught. Eventually got caught that they took the original piece of artwork and tried to replace it with the poster art. And then there was some other cool things, like the that oversized Hulk that was a cutout mounted on wood. I wouldn't even know what to describe how it was made. But I
think some of those big stand-ups were some kind of plastic. They were like a big
laminated plastic. Yes. So I remember there was the Hulk one that was on the bullpen floor, on the 10th floor. It was once lent out, from what I understand, for a convention or something, and that's how the foot got damaged. And then it was like, that's never being lent out again. I remember hearing about that.
And did the meeting room have etched spiderweb doors? There's a big meeting room on 11 or somewhere. I never really went up there but once.
So on the 12th floor, there was a main office. And the Marvel had paid the building to have these special doors made, gigantic glass doors that had etched spider webs on there. And then the room itself had glass cabinets, wooden cabinets, but with glass in front of it. And Terry Stewart, who was the president at the time, went hunting for old Marvel original merchandising from back in the day. And he put it into these cases because there was no real, as he was putting it, there was no real historical stuff kept. So he found older stuff and had put them into the glass cases of all this stuff. And then it had a giant table where we would meet at. And it was also the spot where, again, that's the main meeting room for the big wigs on the 12th floor. And it was also the starting point to the Marvel tour, where the kids would go there and Spider-Man would do his little speech and stuff like that. And you would get, you can get there, no other place in the offices, you could get the Spider-Man napkins and the Spider-Man the name escapes me. What you put your coffee mug on? The
coasters.
A coaster. So they had special Spider-Man coasters. That's the only place you could get, because they would give those out to the kids as well when we would have when they would have the meetings. And and then the back wall, if I remember correctly, were graphic novels, especially the Masterworks.
Okay.
Were kind of displayed there, and they had a whole bunch of books up there as well. And that was the main boardroom. And then when Marvel was to move from there, the choices were whoever's buying the place can either keep the doors, or they had to pay for the doors to be removed, and Marvel wasn't going to pay for a thing. So the doors eventually went up for auction on eBay, and I don't believe they ever sold, because part of the auction was, if you want these doors, you would have to pay to have them removed.
Wow. I don't know if I mentioned, it was a couple of weeks ago, I walked down in one of my walk-in talks that I post on YouTube, where I walk in New York City as a to and from 14th Street and Penn Station. I actually walked across town to 387 Park Avenue, because it was Johnny Green, who was Apocalypse some number on YouTube, actually was commenting on some of my walk and talk, because Johnny Green used to work with us at Marvel in the 90s, but I don't know, he moved to Florida, I don't know what, 25 years ago now.
Something like that, yeah. I believe he's still in Florida. I am in contact to him through Fred Haynes.
Okay.
So every now and then Fred will draw something. Johnny, as usual, will ink it, and then I would be the one to color it. So every now and then Fred will call me up and go, "Hey, do you have time to color a couple of pieces?" and usually Johnny inks it.
And Johnny was a New York City kid too. He grew up in New York. So he started watching my walk and talks, and he was really enjoying them, leaving me some messages. And he's like, "Oh, you ever go down to 387?" So this is like a month ago. I'm like, okay, one of these Tuesdays, I usually have some extra time going in. So I made a walk and talk. I think my usual walk and talks are about 17 minutes long, because it's between 31st Street and 14th Street. Sometimes I usually have 7th Avenue. Sometimes I walk over and go down 6th. Sometimes I've been going down up and down 8th too, just to make them different. But this day I walked across town to Broadway. Then I walked down Broadway to 28th Street, and then I took 28th Street all the way to Park Avenue South, and looked around. Showed the street. Then I went across to 387, where Marvel was in the 90s, and I stood outside and filmed for a couple of minutes there, and then continued to film around the neighborhood, and then went through Madison Square Park, where we used to play touch football at lunch sometimes. But it was like nothing over there is the same. There's
no, not at all.
Not a thing, except for the McDonald's that's still there.
Yep.
All the other stores there's like none of our lunch places are left. Nothing. Photo, of course, is long gone.
Yeah, I walk at that area once in a while, especially during the convention season. So when there's a convention at the Javits, there's usually a get together at the at Abbey Cavern, and I will walk by there, and it's like, and I sometimes take a video of it, and that whole area is so different, and it's wild to me how different that area is. While we were there, there were changes. There were changes while we were
from the beginning of the 90s to the end of the 90s. A lot of changes.
A whole bunch of changes happened. So it's like I could see a corner and go, I know what that was 2 stores before then. And that's wild in itself.
Yeah.
It's a bit crazy.
But my walk and talk for that day was 40 minutes long.
Oh,
It's
really?
like, holy cow! I can't believe I've been talking for this long.
Mhm.
That's... Uh-huh. I really wish, in hindsight, because Wednesday when I went in for that last commute that went wrong, I was gonna do 2 extra walk and talks for January when I'm not commuting. Um, I really wish, but I was just way too flustered to do one. I really wish I could have done one between on the subway between Grand Central and 14th Street, because that's probably really interesting to people who have never done it, because it's like you're never outside. I went from Grand Central Station to 14th Street without ever seeing the open air. It was all underground. And then that insult to injury at the very end of my subway ride. I'm at the 14th Street station, 14th Street, 7th Avenue, and I see the A, which I'm never at, so I don't know my way around it. So I see the sign right ahead of me says, and it's pouring and it's raining out. The sign ahead of me says 13th Street and 7th Avenue. I'm like, oh, I'll walk in the other direction to get to 14th Street. So I walked in the other direction to get to 14th Street. Underground, this is, in the subway station. But no, it was 12th Street. Oh. So then I just went up the stairs and walked the 2 blocks in the rain to, it wasn't quite pouring rain then, so I was okay. To 14th Street. I'm like, I guessed wrong. We all know that feeling in your strange subway station, and you just
so many times that I'll get out of the subway and it's like, all right, I'm guessing I walked this way, should be the correct way, and it never is.
There was one time I had to call up to do federal jury duty. Now, where I live in Rockland County, New York, you do your federal jury duty either across the river in White Plains or down in Manhattan. At what's the name of that place in Manhattan that all the TV shows take place? One Federal Plaza or something like that. So I was like, I wasn't commuting at the time. I was, I think that was after my Marvel Day. I was like, oh crap! I have to go into Manhattan and report for jury duty. Of course, is a pain. I checked I think this was even before Secaucus Junction was open, so I was still taking the bus. So I'm checking the bus schedule. This is before smartphones too.
Yeah.
Checking the bus schedule, what bus I got to take down there. Checking the subway, what subway goes over there. Da da da. So I take the bus in to Port Authority. Take the Port Authority bus day. I think I may have taken 2 trains. I don't remember, but took the subway down to walked out of the subway, and it wasn't until that very moment that I realized I have never been in this neighborhood before. I have never taken off at this subway stop before. I have no idea what direction to walk in. I'm standing on the street going, I have no idea. So I had to ask someone, I'm like, where's one Federal Plaza? They're like, right over there. I'm like, thanks. Because I was like, I have no idea. And that thought you're used to going on subway stops,
Right.
You're used to knowing streets but that part, there's like a courtyard. It isn't like streets and avenues parallel to each other. It's like one of those parts of New York that's the old Dutch town. Then there's courtyards and things, and it's like, where is it?
Still cobblestones in some places.
Yeah, I don't know.
Are you aware of the neighborhood map that's in the subway?
Not at the time. I never even thought of it.
Oh, okay.
It didn't even occur to me that I wouldn't know where to go after I got out of the subway. That thought never occurred to me until I got out of the subway and had no idea where to go. And was like, I've never been here before. It just never struck me that I'd never been there before until I was there.
Right. Yeah, so those who don't know, because I didn't learn this until way later into traveling by subway, is that once you get off the subway, but before you leave
Yeah.
the system, there is a smaller map. Well, not a smaller map. There is a map of just the immediate area, and then you could get an idea what's within walking distance in it. And it's like once I learned that, it got easier. But yet still, even though going somewhere, and even if it's going somewhere where I've been to before, and I think I know where I'm going,
Right.
that's the hubris. Sometimes like, oh yeah, that's in Soho. I just get off here and I should be able to walk to this place. But when you get out of the subway and you realize this is not where I thought I was going to get out of.
Because a subway often has half a dozen different exits and entrances.
Exactly. And
like
then,
the one at the entrance I was looking, there's an entrance exit on the subway right on the corner of 14th and 7th Avenue, right next to where I have to go. Somehow I ended up on 12th Avenue. I mean, that's 12th Street. That's 2 streets away.
yeah.
That subway station is big.
Sometimes I don't really know how to read how to read the area. So this is the exit that goes to northeast corner. This or that is like I have no idea, sense of direction. Where's northeast? Because you're on the ground.
And so also, some subway stations are small, but 14th, 34th, 42nd, 58th. Some of the big ones uptown, I don't really know. They're giant. They go for blocks underground. So it's like if it tells you northeast, sometimes it'll tell you like northeast corner of 7th Avenue, and you're like, okay.
Yeah.
I guess.
It sounds good. Wait till I get upstairs.
Like even just like going from when I was in, I haven't been in Grand Central and taken the shuttle in a decade. But I'm like, I'll just follow the signs. But that's not even always easy because the signs for 7 different subways once the shuttle, and they just point you down this general direction in a tunnel. You're like, okay, I guess I'll just keep walking wherever that arrow. And then you got to look for the next sign with an arrow because there's a lot down there.
Exactly. There is so much down there. And I don't know if you even been to the new section of Grand Central to take you can now from Grand Central take
the LIR
right to the airport. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been there.
That is a trip because you're just keep going down into the city. And so you get to this new spot because it looks all clean. It's a new spot. And it's like you're in a whole different section of Grand Central. And you go and you're traveling. And then you can either take an elevator to go even further down.
You're like, what am I doing?
Yeah, exactly. And it gets to the point where it's like, is there another subway system underneath it? And it is. It's just a different subway. It's like you got to go down to one subway system and down into another train system.
In recent years, they've connected the Long Island Railroad to Grand Central, where it was never connected before.
Yeah.
So
it's a great trip. It makes everything so much quicker.
Yeah,
I could take the Metro North into Grand Central, right to Grand Central, and then catch it from there to get to basically the air train. And then take that, and it's so much easier going that way.
Where did you used to have to go to catch the LIRR from Grand Central? Did you used to have to go down to Penn or out to Jamaica?
Out to Jamaica. Or you have to get to the A,
right,
and then travel that way.
Well, if you're on the A, you can get off at Penn.
Right. But it was like I think we had to get, because a section of the Bronx we're in. We're on we would get into the east side of New York, but we really technically get to the west side of New York to get in more into going to JFK. And it's just it was just a hassle to get there. But this makes it a little easier. I think it does cut about a half an hour off the commute.
Right.
So thank you for listening to Travel Talk.
New York City train talk.
Did a little bit of the history of the subway system.
Like I really, in hindsight, I wish I had been. I don't have to make a special trip just to make a walk and talk video from the shuttle to the down to 14, because it's just no one has any idea. Like it's like if you're not in New York, you don't know what it's like under there. It's kind of crazy, and there's just so much going on.
Yeah.
But next week, a special treat: the Staten Island Ferry.
I've been on that since the early 90s.
Yeah, that's an easy trip. That's the 4 train right there. You get out, you walk over, you're on there. Staten Island. You could also just do that as a ride. You don't even have to get off at Staten Island. You get off to basically walk and get back on the ferry and come back home.
Yeah, there used to be a puppet show on YouTube called Glove and Boots, and there was a character called Johnny from Johnny, who had a New Yorker accent, and he used to say, "We love you, tourists. See the city, see the Statue of Liberty, see Staten Island. Don't go to Staten Island. It's where we put our garbage."
I just saw a notice which I didn't know existed, that they like reopened up the food service on the Staten Island ferry. They have I guess you can get food on the Staten Island ferry, and it's been closed since COVID or something like that. But they just reopened it this week. So if you can ride the Staten Island ferry, get yourself some snacks or a meal.
So the Staten Island ferry, in the center of the ferry is the kitchen area where you can get food. So when me and some friends used to do like the 5-borough pub crawl, where we would go to a bar in every single borough, because of the time limitation and how much the ferry takes time. Usually the ferry is the first trip. Staten Island's the first trip. But instead of having a beer in a local bar in Staten Island, we would just have it on the ferry. And in the center of the ferry would be, so we would have a beer going and then a beer coming back. But they had like basically a kitchenette type of thing where you could get, burgers, fries, hot dog, a knish, New York City food on there, and they would have various drinks, and they did serve beer. But that would be like in the very center of the ferry was this kitchen area.
Interesting.
But I wasn't aware it was closed. But then again, we haven't done a pub crawl since before COVID anyway.
A long time ago.
Quite some time ago.
All right, well, we should wrap it up for the evening. It was nice talking to everyone out there.
Good talking to you guys. And how are you feeling? You sound good.
I'm feeling much better. My cold is gone. A little sinus stuffiness today, but that's just normal stuff.
Okay.
See, we need there's our balloons. Oh, there's the confetti. There's the balloons. Let's get some lasers. All right. Can't end the show without doing that.
Exactly.
I've got much more energy this week.
That's good. That's good.
All right. So everybody have a good night out there.
Take care, everybody.
Next time.
Have a good weekend.